Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my May 2026 reading vlog. Thank you, Gus. So for this month I have already started 2 books. Of course, one of them is the one that I have started and have yet to continue for all year, and that is War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. But look, I'm 460 pages into the novel now. I've actually moved since February when I gave up on reading it. I'm back, and so far the story's pretty good. It's actually getting into what is going on in the story. Of course, in the first 200 pages there was establishing the characters, establishing Pierre's legitimacy because he was an illegitimate son. He's been legitimized. There was war, obviously, the beginning of the war, the beginning of the 1800s, and now we are about 9 years into the 1800s. War is still going on, but now there is more character development going on between Pierre and Bolkonsky, that other guy, and we've just been introduced to Natasha and her family, and now we are understanding the plot synopsis on the back of the novel. So there is much more happening in the novel, but that is just all I will say for now, and I will talk more about it in the poster vlog, of course. And then I am also reading Romantic Outlaws, The Extraordinary Lives of Mary Wollstonecraft and Her Daughter Mary Shelley by Charlotte Gordon. This is a biography of both women, being Mary Wollstonecraft, who was a feminist and wrote on the vindication of the rights of women, and her daughter Mary Shelley, who famously wrote Frankenstein as well as a few other things. This book chronicles both of their lives, as much of their lives as we know, because a lot of their journals and primary sources have been destroyed, but it has 2 dual chapters, so it will start with Wollstonecraft, then go into Shelley, and so far I've been into their early lives, and I have only just gotten to when Mary Wollstonecraft has begun writing for a publication, and Mary Shelley has just visited Lord Byron, and they are about to be trapped in the castle in Geneva for a month with nothing to do, so I wonder what's going to happen there. So far, this book is really well written, and you understand who the author is talking about at all times, even though there are multiple people with similar names. I really enjoy the way that this story is framed, having one being the mother and then the one being the daughter, and it's overlapping because the two never met, because Mary Wollstonecraft died giving birth to Mary Shelley. So of course there is a lot that parallels, but there's also a lot of contrast. And it also shows how Mary Shelley's father, William Godwin, was a terrible person, but when he got to know Mary Wollstonecraft, he was a different man. So it's a very interesting book. However, one of my only issues with it is just the lack of plain historiography on page. It reads more like a narrative rather than a biography in some cases, because while I do know that the author is getting some of her sources from journals, I don't know where she's getting the rest of her historiography. Historiography is the process of the sources that you use, the information that you use in order to garner your own information on a subject, particularly in history. So it is all of the sources that you read being the primary documents, journals, and then secondary sources being other academics who wrote on the same subject and helped foster your opinions on that subject. So just the lack of historiography on page is a little jarring for me, but I do know that the book has consistent notes and sources in the back, so of course it is fine in that way. It's just odd not having it on page, understanding where the author is getting her sources from. All she says is someone was quoted as saying, but you don't know where that quote comes from. So it's just a little nitpick, nothing too crazy. So far I am really enjoying this. This is just kind of like a crazy gossip magazine because both of these figures were really controversial in their time. Mary especially, her and her friends are called the League of Incest, and I think that's really funny. And then, of course, Wollstonecraft was a feminist in her time and, of course, didn't act according to the period. So she is a very interesting woman in herself, and I'm glad I'm learning more about these 2 figures. I knew a bit more about Shelley, but learning more about Wollstonecraft is very interesting. So those are the 2 books that I have started this month. We're only a couple of days in, so stay tuned for what I read next. Hello, this is just a quick update to say that I am reading yet another book. I wanted something with some levity since I've been reading such huge, giant books. I wanted something shorter, sweeter, and something I didn't really need to put a lot of focus into. So I am reading A Fire in the Sky by Sophie Jordan. I had heard about this book from other booktubers, and the premise had a little bit of interest to me because in the synopsis, the main character Tamsin was described as being like a whipping girl for the royal family, that meaning she was adopted into the royal family and is used as punishment for all of the other princesses. So if the princesses do something bad, no matter what, she gets punished for it, she gets blamed, so she gets all of the whipping, she gets all of the punishments, the go to your room, all of that. So I was interested to see how the author would end up navigating that, and it turns out not very well. This book is not well written at all. It is a typical romantasy, that being this main character who is the whipping girl for the royal family has been married off to this big, scary northern Viking man. It is also a world where magic used to exist, but now it no longer does. For some reason, all of the humans killed off all of the dragons. One thing about this book is they do not explain why. That's very funny to me. It is just something that happened, and there's no explanation for it, that being the propaganda reason on the human side, or just the logistical reason. They just killed all the dragons for no reason. I don't know. But anyway, this book is a huge jumbled mess, and not just in the premise, which itself has no explanation, has no proper plot, has no proper intrigue to it. It's just sort of happening as is, and there's just, the writing is so juvenile. It's not even just typical run-of-the-mill romantasy. It is an 11-year-old's fan fiction, an 11-year-old's self-insert fan fiction, which it's fine when you're 11 and you start writing and you need to get used to how actual novels work and how characters actually think, and they don't constantly contradict themselves on page. The main character will go, oh, I think the king is okay. Wait, no, I don't actually. I don't think that, it happens on page. And that thought process is just, don't put that in your book. That's kind of stupid. There is also just a lot of contradictions in what how society runs. So they explain the whipping girl is a very, very important role in the royal family, that there have been generations of different boys and girls being adopted into the family and treated as a whipping boy or as a whipping girl, and that they grow up to be high members of court, that they are well revered in society, yet she's treated like garbage and she's bullied by people. They use the word bullied. And she's treated horribly by everyone. So there's just no proper, she should be well revered despite the punishments, but no, she's actually treated horribly because she's different. So there's no, it's not even a nuanced thing. It is just heavily black and white, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Plus, as I mentioned before, the dragons being killed for no reason. The author probably just read Game of Thrones and went, there was no magic and no dragons in that book. Me too. There isn't even that much to say about the male love interest. He's just this giant tree trunk of a man. They literally say his legs are like tree trunks. He's just the world's biggest man. He's probably 15 feet tall, and he's as big as a truck or something, and he's just a big scary Viking man, and his dual perspective reveals nothing, and I usually hate when there's dual perspective. I would rather just follow her and her perceptions being changed, and her, whether she falls in love with him or not. I don't care. I don't need him to come in and have everything explained without me having to think. This book really does not want me to think. And yes, I picked up the book because I wanted something a bit lighter, but I love thinking, and I hate books like this that need to say absolutely everything with no inference on my part. Why should I have to think one word already on page? So it's just this horrible thing, but at least I knew going into it that it was going to be a horrible thing. It was mostly just something a little bit easy to laugh at. It's worse than I thought.
I thought I was getting something a bit more generic, but it's not good. It's not good. And yeah, I don't think my mind will change on that. So stay tuned for more updates on my other books soon.
Here is an update to say that I finally locked in yesterday and I ended up finishing 2 of my books that I'm reading for the month. The first one I finished was Romantic Outlaws by Charlotte Gordon, and I am giving the book 4 stars. I thought this was a wonderful dual biography of both Mary Wollstonecraft and Mary Shelley. I learned a lot from these, and it was really cool that the author got to see a lot of journals from all the figures in this novel and was able to garner a lot of information about both figures and also do a lot of questioning about how their work was perceived both in their time period and after their deaths. The final chapter talked a lot about how these 2 figures were written about posthumously and how all of their ideas changed and how their ideas got rediscovered and recontextualized within our history and why we know both of these figures today. This is an incredibly readable biography, and I really enjoyed looking at the lives of both of these women and all of the craziness that happened surrounding them, especially Mary Shelley and Percy and Lord Byron. I just love that sort of thing. I love reading about those gothic romantic writers. I also finished A Fire in the Sky by Sophie Jordan, and I knew I would not be giving this book a high rating, and I'm not. It's getting 1 star from me. It was so predictable. The writing was really bad. Every single action in the book was described violently, so it would just even be like his eyes blazed in my direction. Like, calm down. Not everything is that crazy. It was just very ridiculous. They did finally explain why dragons got eradicated, but it was not a very good reason. And the romance in here was absolutely nothing, of course, and the plot was nothing. There's supposed to be 2 books, but I'm not going to read the second one. I was only interested in this novel because of the premise of the female main character being a royal whipping girl, and then the author had the audacity at the end to be like, this is based in historical fact, and tried to cite something to do with people being whipped in the past for the royal family, and it considered being an honor, as if the people who wrote it weren't obviously advocating for the royal family. So she took that literally and thinks that royal whipping boys and girls were real and that it was really an honor to be that, despite the fact there is no real historical evidence. However, people probably would have been beaten on behalf of the royal family, and it would not have been considered an honor. They just have to say that. Think for a second. Anyway, I'm never going into that again. I will never go into that genre again. I will never be intrigued by one small detail that amounted to nothing. I'm done with that, and I'm going to stick with the stuff that I know. So for my next book, I plan to read Covenant of the Vampire, The Diaries of the Family Dracul by Jeanne Kalogridis. This is a series that was published in the 90s, and it is about Vlad Tepes, that theory that Vlad the Impaler is Dracula. So this is a little fictional story about his family and how he probably becomes a vampire. So I'm very interested in reading this. Funnily enough, pretty good ratings. I've heard from this. I found this at a thrift store, so we'll see. This has been my first vampire read in a really, really long time. I think my first one all year. So I'm excited to get into this. And stay tuned for my updates and my wrap-up soon. Okay, here we are at the final wrap-up. So this month was a little bit slow. I only ended up reading 4 things this month. The first thing I read was obviously continuing War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. I managed to get to page 771 out of 1200. So I have an entire novel left to go, 500 pages. I don't know if I'll be able to finish it by my planned goal of June, but we will have to see because I only have 4 more books off of the poster. I can cram half this book into the final vlog if I have to. Next, I read Romantic Outlaws by Charlotte Gordon, that being the dual biography of Mary Wollstonecraft and Mary Shelley, and I gave that book 4 stars. I thought that that was an excellent dual biography depicting the lives of both Mary Wollstonecraft and Mary Shelley as both mother and daughter, and as their brilliant writing careers and their lives. Very, very interesting stuff. I am so glad that I picked it up and read it. I did not know a lot about Mary Wollstonecraft. I had only ever read A Vindication of the Rights of Women, so I was so glad that I got to learn about her life and what she did and what she wrote. And then, of course, on Mary Shelley's side, I am very, very interested in learning about her life, as well as Percy Shelley's life, and of course, Lord Byron's life, and they were all connected. It is unfortunately a very, very sad life, but still an interesting one nonetheless. I highly recommend this book. It is very, very easy to read, and I am so glad that I read it, and I really, really enjoyed it. In contrast, I read A Fire in the Sky by Sophie Jordan because I was interested in one part of the premise, and I have now learned to never follow that instinct again. A Fire in the Sky is a romantasy, pretty juvenile but still new adult novel featuring dragons and a royal family and a neighboring northern nation and their struggle to sort of connect amidst a war where they got rid of all the dragons, and the main character was the royal whipping girl for the royal family, that being if the princesses got into trouble, she was the body who was punished. And there ends up being a mix-up where the leader of this northern nation wants to marry one of the princesses, but they deem him too brutal, so they try to trick him into marrying the royal whipping girl instead. And more plot ensues that is just crazy. Remember how I complained that there was the killing off of dragons for absolutely no reason? They tell you the reason and it is bonkers. Turns out people can turn into dragons or something, or dragons can give birth to people or something. There is a huge reveal in here and it is crazy, and I could not believe my eyes as I was reading it. The writing in here was terrible. It was awful. Some of the worst writing that I have ever seen in a published novel of any genre. And it was just so laughably bad. A lot of the descriptions were just awful. The dialogue was worse. And the author is in the, like, very, very juvenile school of writing where you think you have to write the character's entire process of thinking and how their thinking changes. It's very, very, very new fanfic writer, like 12 to 15-year-old fanfic writing. and I don't understand how these books got published. It seems like the authors published other stuff before, so maybe this was just a cheap, like, cash in on a trend, obviously, but it was just very bad, and it makes me really, really not want to try any of that genre ever again. So don't let me try any of that genre ever again. If you see me posting about reading stuff, say, no, stop it, you were supposed to stop. I really, really do not want to get into any more of that romantasy genre, or really anything published very, very recently, because it seems like the way the publishing industry is going, the editing industry is going, it's pretty bad. So A Fire in the Sky by Sophie Jordan got 1 star from me. Finally, I ended my month with something really, really fun. I read Covenant with the Vampire by Jeanne Kalogridis, and I gave this book 4 stars. This book is the premise that this man with his newly pregnant wife go back to his old country, Transylvania, upon the death of his father, and he figures out he has become the heir to this ancient medieval castle and has to take care of the remaining members of his family, that being his bedridden sister and his really, really weird, very, very old uncle named Vlad. I wonder what this could be a setup for. This was a super, super fun and interesting epistolary novel, that being everyone writing diary entries about what's going on. Very, very slow paced, but it is a good pace to build up to all of the exciting action, violence, romance, and a lot of pretty gross and sick stuff in here. I really, really enjoyed it. Books published in the 90s really, really went there, and I can really appreciate this author for writing something really, really interesting about a pretty stale subject. Lots of people have written a lot of Dracula-inspired novels, and this one takes a lot of these similarities within Dracula and rewrites them to be completely fresh and new. I was very, very interested in what each of the characters were doing, so switching from one character's diary to another didn't stop any of the momentum for me. I really, really enjoyed this. This had a lot of amazing themes about possession, control, family, and obsessive love, and also devotion, like regular romantic devotion to the ones that you love. And it was very, very interesting with all of the family dynamics and how each member of the family is devoted to each other in what capacity. I really, really enjoyed this. I really, really hope to get the 2nd and 3rd novels in this series, but I found this book while thrifting. It was a very lucky find, and I took a chance. So I am hoping I can find more of this series. Funnily enough, this author is just pretty well known to be a prolific Star Trek novelist, so it's so cool that she branched out and wrote different romantic historical fiction as well, and vampire stories. It is so interesting to see what people's interests lead them to. And I'm really, really glad I took a chance and picked up this really niche yet very, very interesting vampire novel. If you're interested in different genres, check out the novels that were written in the 80s and the 90s. They're really, really innovative and interesting and very, very cool and not really talked about. So branch out and check out stuff that's really, really unique and cool. I really, really liked this one. So that's it. That was my month of May. Pretty spry, I know. 4 books. I guess that's alright because they were very, very large novels, but it just feels odd to have not read any comics. I haven't done that in years. Thank you so, so much for watching. Don't forget to like if you liked this video and subscribe if you didn't. I will see you all next time. Bye bye!